What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the For the Fans podcast. I'm Justin Melillo. Alongside, I've got Kevin McAdams. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
Well, Justin, as you can hear, and I'm sure the rest of the audience can hear, I'm a little bit under the weather, but we're going to give this a go tonight. Other than my voice feeling like complete garbage, I'm actually pretty excited to talk about not only POCONO, but the other topics we have at hand tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to tonight's episode as well. Tonight is episode number 4 of the Fourth Fans podcast. We're going to talk some POCONO. We're going to talk about some package stuff that, it's the P word according to Kyle Busch. We're going to talk about some social media stuff that happened over the week. And we're going to talk about what we're looking forward to in the future in NASCAR, including the Gen 7 car. And we'll look forward to next week as well, or by the time that this podcast comes out this upcoming weekend, probably in a day or two from when you hear this, it looks like. But Michigan's going to be at Cup, and Xfinity's going to be at Michigan. Trucks are going to be at Texas with IndyCar. We'll talk about that later too. So, yeah, I'm just happy to be here tonight, honestly, because I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it home with the amount of gas that was in my tank. You seen that picture that I sent you?
Yeah, good segue about POCONO, because POCONO is always about fuel strategy, so it's just ironic that you had to do a little bit of clutching, a little bit of fuel conservation to get from work to the old studio. So that's just funny to me.
Yeah, it's I definitely learned something from the drivers out there, and I was able to make it at least to the gas station to fill up. So, so let's go into it. Let's get to POCONO. The first race of the weekend was ARCA, and it sucked, so we're not going to talk about it. The second race of the weekend was Xfinity, and we'll talk about that one, because that one was actually a really good race. I was there this weekend. The POCONO trip for me, I do it every year. I do it both times every year. I've been doing it since 2015 religiously. And sure enough, another race. I was happily, I was impressed by it. Not often do you get both races to be good, and that was pretty much the case this weekend. But the Xfinity race, definitely, I was very happy with, and I feel like they put on a really good race.
Yeah, the Xfinity race was awesome. I watched about 80% of it, and every single time I watched it for maybe the first 50, 60 laps, you saw a bunch of different guys up front. I mean, ultimately it was between Custer and Reddick, but you had Bell up there, you had Allgaier up there. It was a really good race, and one thing I actually noticed was that these cars, even with the small spoiler, they were really getting some like slingshot style rafts down the straightaway. So it's curious. I'm curious as to how, just because obviously the formula as of recent is, you have to have a big spoiler and you have to get these cars to have a ton of drag to do anything. And in this race, where the cars had a completely different package from last year being an absolute dud, with Kyle Busch dominating it in a package similar to what they had at Indy, and of course what they have this year in Cup. So I think it's a clear sign that low downforce can work, especially in Xfinity. And it was a really good race, especially at the end.
It had some elements where I was getting a little bit worried, especially in the first stage, where it looked like Cole Custer was just going to run away with the entire race like he almost did at Dover. The saving grace for the first stage was that it was filled with cautions, and there was, the first one was Brandon Jones. He just spun himself out in turn 1. The next one, there was a pile up in turn 2 with some back of the field cars. And then the third one was Christopher Bell, who was a factor all day, but he ended up getting a tiny bit of damage to his the rear of his car. those 3 cautions kind of tied together the first stage into a bunch of restarts, and the restarts were absolutely fantastic.
Right.
But each time Cole Custer was able to pull away, and he led every single lap of the first stage. But you saw guys starting to get in position. Tyler Reddick had to start at the back of the field. He worked his way up to the front by the end of the first stage. Justin Allgaier kind of started like near the front, but kind of mid-pack near the front. He was up there by the end of the stage. Cole Custer, of course, like I said, he was leading. And Christopher Bell, he ended up in the back towards the end of the first stage because of his spin. But as you went into the second stage, there was a little bit of strategy that went on where Christopher Bell stayed out, along with John Hunter Nemechek, and you had guys on different strategies in stage 2, and I really, really enjoyed the way that stage 2 went down. Not just because Justin Allgaier won it, but it was honestly one of the coolest stages that I've ever seen in NASCAR since the implementation of stage racing, where you had the stage was green the entire time. They didn't have a caution in this one. They started out on lap 7 of the 25. So they already lost 6 laps of it. So it was a 19-lap run or so. But you had John Hunter Nemechek starting up front. He falls to the back. Austin Dillon was up front too. He falls to the back. Then you got Allgaier. He like shoots around. Bell had started up front because of his pit strategy. Bell couldn't hold off Allgaier. Allgaier was able to make the pass around him. But right as Allgaier was making the pass, here comes Reddick. And Reddick makes the pass on Bell, and now you got Allgaier versus Reddick coming down to the line. And I really thought Reddick was going to be able to get around Allgaier, but Allgaier was making the right moves to take the air off of Reddick in the corners and take away his line. And by the end of lap 50, it was Allgaier taking home the second stage.
Yeah, it was a really fun race. I think Pocono is one of those tracks that the stage racing, and any time that strategy starts to become a factor, it really improves the racing. Just because if it's a straight shot race, I mean, obviously it's going to get spread out. This is, if not the most boring, one of the most, like, it gets so stretched out just because all it takes is 1 or 2 guys to nail the setup and they're gone. So seeing these guys go back and forth was really fun for me. I was actually really impressed with the racing, just because they could actually pass and make moves. I mean, seeing Reddick go from the back all the way to the front was really impressive to me. And I mean, even guys that that were not really factors early come up to even towards the end, like Chase Briscoe. I was really impressed that Michael Annett was in second at one point because of strategy. So you had a lot of guys who not necessarily run outside the top 10 all that often, but they don't necessarily run in the top 5 that often. It was really nice to see a bunch of guys not only running up front, battling for the win, but just consistently being in the top 5 for the entire race.
It was definitely a good finish to the race as well. The final stage kicked off. They had 50 more laps to go. Cole Custer was finally coming back into it. Allgaier was still leading, but once Custer got to the back of him, Custer he wasn't playing around anymore. I don't think there was any contact between the two of them, but Allgaier gets loose. Custer goes around him. And at that point, you figure, oh, wow, Custer's just going to go run away with it again like he did in the first stage. But it didn't turn out that way. They had to pit. They did pit. And then there was a caution near the end of it as well, which bunched everybody back up and put everybody on different strategies once again. And that's where Chase Briscoe had his strategy to put him up front and get him his third place finish. But the restart, that final restart after Allgaier had spun out and brought out the overtime, the final restart where Reddick sent it. I don't think I've gasped. I can't even talk right now. I'm so excited about this pass that he made. He goes in turn 1. He absolutely sends it in and passes, and he gets past Cole Custer, and it was just one of those jaw-dropping moments where you're like, how did he do that?
Right. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, that's why, I mean, we've talked about Reddick a handful of times in the 2 or 3 episodes that we've had. I mean, he absolutely full sends it into one, and it ended up paying off for him in that moment. But then he pulls off about a half a second, and you think he's got it won just because it's so hard to pass. I mean, it's over. But Custer somehow gets around him. From what little I heard on I think it was Twitter, or maybe it was an interview of some sort, that Reddick actually he was so upset about turns 1 and 2 that he was so tight, and that's what got Custer right behind him. So he cranked a bunch of rear brake into the car going into the last turn, and it just got way too loose, got wrecking loose, and here comes Custer to take, honestly, a race that he definitely deserved to win. He led the most laps, and it was it's been I can't think of a time that we've seen a last lap pass at Pocono of all places. It was pretty awesome to see.
Going into turn 1 on the final lap, I thought I saw it, but I didn't think anybody else did. I was sitting up there in the press box, and I said something, but nobody else said anything. And I was like, was I the only one who saw that, or was I seeing things, or what? But I'm pretty sure Tyler Reddick hit the wall entering turn 1. He went down to do the snake, and he came back up to take the corner, and he just came up a little bit too much and just nipped the wall. And I think that's what set him up for disaster. Well, not disaster, but for failure at the end of the race there, where now he's hit the wall, and maybe he's gotten his psyche that, I pushed it a little bit too hard, or what happened.
I can tell you right now, I'm watching the replay. He definitely grazed it. I mean, he didn't smack it, but he definitely hit it.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and I don't think anybody else saw that up there. I think they talked about it in the post race. Maybe the TV guys saw it, but I don't think any of the other reporters up in the press box had seen that happen. But he goes up, he hits the wall, and going into 1, you can see the gap closing, but he's still not there. And then turn 2 happens, and the gap's still closing, but he's still not there. And going into 3, I'm like, there's no way. I mean, Custer's good, but there's no way. And then I guess, like you said, what happened with putting too much rear brake in, he just psyched himself out that entire last lap. And Custer made, Reddit made the hell of a move to take the lead on the beginning of the overtime. Custer made a hell of a move at the end. Even if Reddick was kind of out of shape, he still stuck it in there and made it stick, and was able to get around him. So Xfinity race, definitely the race of the weekend. Fantastic racing all week, all day, and a fantastic finish to boot. So I definitely would score that one high among the races that we've had all year long in all the divisions.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I watched. It was hard for me to watch the first couple stages of the Cup race, so I did find a good recap, and I saw that a lot of positions were all over the place. I mean, Larson won both stages, but he definitely wasn't a factor at the end. But yeah, I definitely will give the race of the week 100% to Xfinity. Xfinity's on a roll. I think if it goes the way it does, we're going to have not only a really good rest of the season, but the playoffs and then the eventual Final Four. I think it's going to be pretty similar to what we had last year, and it's going to be really exciting, and it's going to be really cool to see who ends up on top. I think we got 3 heavy hitters out of these young guys in Custer and Reddick and Bell, all guys that deserve a Cup ride at this point. They've all shown that they deserve some kind of high-end Cup ride. It's just a matter of if there's any room left. And then you got the likes of Junior Motorsports with, I think Allgaier is going to be leading the charge with them. It's going to be a really interesting rest of the regular season for sure.
I would say those 4 are definitely all the favorites. if we were to have a big four in the Xfinity Series, I would say that those four would be it. Maybe not Allgaier so much right now because he hasn't won yet this season. Just like in Cup, I would say that Kevin Harvick's one of the heavy hitters, but he also hasn't won yet. So you can't put Allgaier in that category just yet until he finds victory lane. But
Right.
I would still say he's one of the favorites to make the Final Four at Homestead, just based on his performance. And I don't have any doubts in my mind that he's going to find victory lane. Like, he's too good of a competitor. He's got a really good program behind him. I don't see Allgaier going winless through the regular season. He's got Iowa coming up, which is a really good track for him. They'll be heading back to Bristol again, which is a really good track for him. A lot of these short tracks, Allgaier performs really well at. But, yeah, definitely all three of the younger guys are deserving of Cup rides, like you said. And you look at that and you're like, where could they fit? And I feel like Tyler Reddick, honestly, has the easiest path out of all three of them, because Richard Childress Racing only has 2 cars right now in the series.
They could easily fill a third.
Yeah, they have room in the stable for a third or a fourth car if they wanted to. They could easily buy back one of the charters that they sold off in the past years from, I think they sold them to Rick Ware Racing. So they could easily buy one of those back and put Tyler Reddick in the number 31 car. Like he's been doing a part-time deal already this season, impressively. So I feel like Tyler Reddick, that you question the move in the offseason. Why would you leave Junior Motorsports and go to Richard Childress Racing after you just won this championship? But I think he had the move already planned. But I'm just saying, like, everybody kind of was scratching their heads thinking that maybe Junior Motorsports was the better program, and why would you leave that? But as you could see, it clearly the programs are equal, if not better, over at RCR right now, and I feel like this has set them up for a more successful future. Then you look at Bell and Custer, and both of them, they're going to need a little bit of help to get Cup rides with their current affiliation, because Bell is with Joe Gibbs Racing, and they've got 4 cars right now. 3 of them have already won this season. The one guy you would think would be the odd man out, as late as last year, you would think Denny Hamlin might be the odd guy out because he hadn't won a race all last season. But Hamlin's got 2 wins. He's safely in the playoffs, and he's been very fast all season. So they're not going to give up Hamlin's seat. And then you look at Eric Jones, who he was the next big thing just a few years ago. They're not going to give up so easily on him either. They're in contract talks with him already. Like, they're going to get the contract done. So it's like, where does Bell go?
Well, I think it's going to be a matter of these satellite teams being another big thing. I really do think we're going to see maybe that Levine family racing car. Maybe that team expands to 2 cars, kind of like how Furniture Row did for Jones in his first Cup year. I really do think that's the route that they're going to go. And to go back to Reddick, you can easily compare him to the likes of a Brad Keselowski, a guy who has immense talent, just with nowhere to go at the high end level, and he has to kind of improvise and go to another place. And honestly, Childress is on the up. I mean, Chevy as a whole is starting to regain its strength back to what it was 3, 4, or 5 years ago. So I'm really interested to see if he can get the sponsorship, if he can really compete next year, if they do end up securing a full season for him. I think at this point, Custer is going to have the most issue, the most help needed, just because you got Boyer, you got Harvick, you got Suarez, and then you got Almirola. Almirola and Suarez are big sponsor attractions, and then you got Boyer, who is just an absolute wheelman, and he's also really good friends with Stewart. I think they got a really good 4. I mean, the only person I can think of that may be the odd man out is Suarez, just because he's the new guy. But man, he brings up a lot. He brings a lot of money. So it's going to be interesting to see where Custer ends up going if he has to go somewhere else. It's going to be hopefully not unfortunate for him, because I think he deserves it. I think if we see an expansion from any other team, he's going to be the first guy that everyone's going to look forward to maybe getting in talks with and signing.
It's funny because it's like Cole Custer almost has an in with Stewart Haas Racing because of his father, Joe, who's a big part of that organization. So it's like weird thinking that Cole Custer is going to have the hardest time trying to secure a seat with his current team. But you're right. It's Almirola's not going anywhere. He proved last year that he belonged in top end equipment, and he's got the Smithfield brand behind him. Yeah. I don't think he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. You look at Suarez, and Suarez is producing. He's not producing wins yet, but nobody on that team has. So you really can't fault him, like you couldn't fault the Hendrick guys last year. So Suarez, I think he's going to be a factor once the program starts turning around. Harvick says he wants to keep racing, and you know that he's not going to be going anywhere. And Boyer, he's, like you said, he's the wheelman. He's really good friends, and I don't foresee him going anywhere. The only way I could see really Custer getting into one of those seats is if one of them retires. And if they were to retire, it would be really abrupt. But you know, that's how I see Custer getting into one of those rides. So yeah, the satellite teams will definitely play a big part, probably. And not for nothing, I mean, the 4-car limit it was maybe a reaction to a problem that didn't exist a couple of years ago, or you know, maybe a decade ago.
Right, with Roush.
Yeah, I mean, Roush, yeah, they're suffering right now, being only a 2-car organization, and not having the speed like they had, you know, over 10 years ago. But, you know, that might have hurt them more than helped them, and the rule was designed to help them. They were a 6-car organization at one point, and then NASCAR's like, well, you got to bring it down to 4. Because we want to limit teams so that they're not overspending and not overdoing it or anything like that. And then, you know, Roush goes down eventually to 4 cars, and then they're down to 3 cars, and now they're down to 2 cars. Last year they were pretty much at 1.5 cars because Trevor Bayne and Matt Kenseth were sharing the seat. So,
right.
You know, like, I don't know if that rule hurt or helped, or it definitely didn't help, but it may have been part of the cause, in my opinion. But
well, it's just ironic that if that was the reason for cutting costs, was to get rid of the number of teams. Personally, I wouldn't care if a Hendrick, if a Penske, if a Gibbs had 5, 6, 7 cars. I just want to see good racing. The amount of spending these teams do anyway has caused, and it's kind of like a result of NASCAR introducing new cars and the amount of engineering and technology that these guys are putting into as far as money goes. It's a money pit as it is. So I don't think even if they got rid of that rule, I think we'd be in the same situation. I think we would have seen teams consolidating from 4-car operations to 3 and now 2-car operations with the likes of RCR and Roush. So 2 big powerhouses in the 90s and 2000s are relegated to 2-car teams just because these cars are so incredibly expensive. So now we have, I'd say, probably 25 competitive cars, whereas back in the day, I mean, you could have a guy like Johnny Benson run 35th one week and then win the other. So I hope, and we'll get into it with the Gen 7, I hope the change of the car allows for more competitive drivers to have more competitive rides. Because, I mean, you got the likes of Buescher and Preece and basically third-rate Hendrick equipment, and they're doing well. So it's just encouraging to see that. But we're getting a little off topic. Reddick Can't believe he choked it away. He's normally pretty clutch in these situations, but Custer gets the win. Good to see, once again, I mentioned before, Ryan Preece. He snags the top 5 in his part-time effort, and Christopher Bell recovered nicely to get 5th. Briscoe was in 3rd. Then, of course, you had Reddick in 2nd to close out the Pocono 259.5 or whatever it ended up being.
Yeah, because of the overtime. Yeah, Pocono
7.5.
Pocono Green. It's. I'm gonna go off on a tiny bit of a tangent here. It's not pleasant to come into Pocono without having sponsorship on either of the races. They had the Pocono Green 250 and the Pocono 400 this year. In past years, we've seen the Windows 10 400. We've seen the Axalta We Paint Winners 400. So this year to not have sponsorship on those races, I'm a little bit worried about that. But I mean, maybe they'll have a bigger sponsor coming up next year when they have the double header. But that's you mentioned that it was a Pocono 257, so I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, Reddick choked it away, but I mean, you can't take it away from Custer the drive that he had. So that was a really fun competitive event. And you know what wasn't? The Cup race.
Yep.
Cup race was not a fun one. And if you look at the Jeff Gluck poll, it was many people agree with us that it was not a good race on Sunday afternoon. Which, you know what? I'm glad they got it in. Having gone to the track at Dover a couple weeks ago and having had to go home without seeing a race, even though the Dover race wasn't that great either, I'm still sad that I missed it. And I paid the money to go out there and see a race, and I didn't get to see a race, and I would have been devastated if I would have had that happen to me again at Pocono. But storms were threatening the entire day, and we got the whole race, and it was pretty much sunny the entire time. So, but the race itself, 160 laps, 3 stages broken up 50, 50, 60. And, yeah, Kyle Busch was pretty dominant all day. He led half the laps. He led 79 of the 160 laps. But he didn't collect any stage points in doing that. And that's because he played the strategy game, which was smart. It was the strategy that allowed him to keep his lead on all the restarts. Kyle Larson, he won both stages because he wanted points, and that's smart on him too.
Yeah, he got him. Definitely did.
He got 20 extra points, plus 2 playoff points should he make the playoffs. I mean, if he didn't get those 20 points, he'd be 20 points outside of the chase right now, outside of the playoffs, because he's tied for that last spot with Jimmy Johnson right now. If he didn't get any of those points, then we're talking about, Kyle Larson being on the outside looking in. But Kyle Larson and his team, they rallied together to put themselves in a position to grab not only stage 1 but also stage 2. But at the end, he kind of screwed himself and wrecked himself off of Boyer's nose and took what could have been a 40-point day and turned it into just a 20-point day. So that was kind of exciting in that regard for Kyle Larson, but sucked that he had a sucky finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the fact that there's this artificial, you got to get these stage points. I'm just not a fan of it. It's, I mean, good for Kyle playing the strategy right. He scored 31 points. I mean, if you want to compare drivers, Denny Hamlin and Kurt Busch, who finished 6th and 11th respectively, scored the same points, and Larson finished in 26th. So good for him on playing the strategy right and getting a couple playoff points. But the fact that Kyle Busch didn't really care about it because he was focusing on the win, I mean, it is what it is. I don't know. It frustrated me going into this week because I knew it was so hyped that they're going to get these giant runs like they would when they went to Pocono with IndyCar. I'm sure you've remembered a few years ago when like the likes of Will Power won the race. Those races were phenomenal up until recent years when they changed the car again. But I think they were expecting something like that, and it absolutely was not that. It was spread out. The amount of aerodynamic disadvantage behind another car was more prevalent than I've ever seen at Pocono. It's a track that honestly they need to have as low downforce as possible because it's a one-lane track. It's not like how it used to be, where turns 1 and 3 had multiple groove racing, whether it's the bumps in 1, forcing you to run 3 or 4 lanes up, or the grip strip that they had put in place in 2009, I want to say.
I missed the grip strip. That
It
was
so fun.
that was so fun.
Yeah, it was just another option, and it made the racing all the more better. Maybe they can do something. I think they need to do something with the PJ1 here. I think this track needs it. It's obviously huge. It's a huge track, so you got to put a bunch down. But I think it would vastly improve the racing, just so these guys can get out from behind the car in front of them. Because man, Kyle Busch said it best. You didn't have to worry about passing anybody. You just had to pass one guy. So he did it, and that was the end of the race for the most part. And it was honestly, like you mentioned before with Jeff Gluck's pole, I actually wanted to look at it real fast because I hadn't looked at it. It's since 2016, it's the fifth worst race on his record. And it's Pocono. So, you expect that. But, man, that race sucked.
And I'm not going to take it away from anything that, what, the racing didn't pan out. We didn't have the fun racing that we were hoping for, but it was no different than any other Pocono race than I ever been to. That was just a normal Pocono race. Like the 2016 editions with the rain and Kurt Busch getting the first one with the race being pushed back to Monday, and then Chris Buescher getting the second one with the fog. Those were two of the most fun Pocono races that I've ever been to, just because the way that they played out because of the weather. But you're not going to get weather every single time you go to Pocono. Or you do, but sometimes it just doesn't pan out. And we didn't have it pan out on Sunday. Sunday was just a strategy fest. It wasn't a race. It was a calculated event where they were going really fast and figuring out when to use pit strategy and when to come into the pits and when to, take tires or not take tires. And Kevin Harvick almost spoiled it for Kyle Busch. He took 2 tires there at the end. But it didn't work out for him because his crew kind of screwed him. They left, what was it, an uncontrolled tire?
It was an uncontrolled tire when they came around for the left side.
Yeah, so they uncontrolled the tire, and he was forced to come back into the pits. And if that didn't happen, he might have been the leader, and we might have had Kyle Busch trying with all his might to try and get around Harvick, but not able to because of the package. And that might have produced a better finish than we could have, hoped of in that situation. But no, we didn't get that. We had Kyle Busch, after Harvick served his penalty, back in the lead. We had a caution at the end with Stenhouse getting up into the wall, and so we did have a restart. But Kyle Busch is just so damn good and just pulled away, and Keselowski couldn't do anything. Keselowski was trying to chase him down. He couldn't do anything, and Eric Jones was out there, and he couldn't do anything. So, kudos to Kyle Busch. He's definitely, the most talented racer that we have in the sport today. And he goes out there and he's got a really great crew behind him where they're able to put the right moves on the rest of the field and put him in position. And yeah, he did make that one pass. It was a hell of a pass. He passed him on the outside in turn 3. Yep. Without the grip strip, and very impressive move, but that was one move in 160 laps for the lead. That was the only pass for the lead under green flag conditions on the track, not on pit road. So
Right.
that's disappointing, and that's not what the fans want to see. They want to see passing for the lead. They want to see people being able to catch somebody and then having the faster car go around them. They don't want to see the arrow bullshit that we have to deal with today. It sucks. It really does. And I wish we had last year's package, because we might have had a better chance at getting some passing for the lead. But I mean, can't take it away from Kyle Busch. And he said it in the media center afterwards. You know, he went out there, he did his job, he did what he was supposed to do, and he walked away as the winner. And he expects to do that every week. And package, no package, whatever it is, that's his job. And he's clearly done talking about the package.
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame him. He said his piece, and anytime he said anything, he said exactly what he feels, and every single time he does it, he gets some kind of backlash. I mean, at this point, I can understand his frustration. I think he should just put it on the gas pedal even more and shove it down not only the fans' throats, but the entire sanctioning body, that this package is absolute garbage. It takes the driver out of the race 100%. I mean, you look at William Byron. He led the first 25 laps. Never heard from him again after he got passed. He ended up finishing, I think, 9th. But it's just, I can understand these drivers' frustration. We've talked about the racing and the package ad nauseum already, but I can't help it from bringing it up because it's so bad. And we're going to a track next week where it should, if it doesn't work at Michigan, it doesn't work anywhere. It's not going to work anywhere. So I'm curious to see how that works. But I mean, I can understand why he doesn't want to talk about it. He said his piece. Obviously, they're not going to change it. So at this point, why keep bitching? I mean, like I said, if I was him, I would drill it every week. Like, listen, I know you guys aren't going to change it this week. I know you guys aren't going to change it next week. I know you're not going to change it until maybe 2021. But this package is total shit, and it takes the drivers out of it, and it puts the cars in a predicament where you can't pass. I mean, you can, but man, it is so hard. I mean, if you're 5/10 faster than somebody, you get right behind them, you're a half second slower. And it's inexcusable. That should not be happening, especially the way these cars are. They're supposed to be passing in the corner or out of the corner. These are not IndyCar. This is not Formula One with DRS. I mean, I know that's what they're going for, but that's not how these cars should be racing. They should be making up all the ground in the corner where they're fighting the car and they're hopping up and down on the bumps, and they got 100 pounds of downforce. So they're basically sawing on the wheel, lap in and lap out, because they're doing 140 miles an hour in the corner at Atlanta. And then that's just not the case anymore because they got 5,000 pounds of downforce or 3,000 pounds of downforce. And it's a wide open race, and that's when it's the best. And everyone goes, well, man, those restarts are great. Well, yeah. Well, look at Daytona and Talladega. The racing is great because it's wide open. Of course it's going to be good. But then, of course, as the race goes on, it gets spread out, and then it becomes a spacing parade where you got 3/4 of a second between each car. And that's not racing. That's not fun for anybody.
I don't want Kyle Busch to stop talking about the package, because I feel like if he stops talking about the package and we stop getting reactions out of him, that it's just going to go away and everybody's going to think everything's fine, which it's not. It's not fine. Things are not fine right now. Kyle, like him or hate him, most people hate him, but Kyle Busch speaks his mind. He says exactly what he wants to say in the way he wants to say it. It's calculated. He's a smart fella. He wants to drill a point across that he doesn't like the package. He's made that point so clear. There's no other driver in the garage right now that's even remotely close to as outspoken as he is about this package.
I would say maybe Boyer, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, maybe Boyer, but Boyer's saying that in the heat of the moment. Busch just won he won the race, and he's talking about how much it sucks. Just like he did with the car tomorrow when he won the Bristol race in 2007, this car sucks. He just won at Pocono. He's happy that he did his job, but this car sucks. And maybe he's tired of repeating himself, but Kyle, don't stop talking about it. We need you. We need other drivers too. We need you guys to keep talking. If nobody's talking about the package, then NASCAR is just going to think everything's great, and they're just going to keep moving forward and keep evolving and keep making things worse, which when we get to the Gen 7 car in 2021, it could be the worst possible thing because nobody said anything or nobody's talking about it anymore. So I'm just going to segue real quick. We're going to have a fan question this week. We forgot it last week, but fan question for this week. Do you think we should stop talking about the package? And yes, why? No, why? Tell us. We want to know what you guys think. We want to know what you all think about, talking about the package. Is Kyle right that maybe we should all just shut up and just move on? Or are we right that we want everybody to keep talking about it so that maybe something gets changed? I don't know. That's our question for the fans this week. Should we stop talking about the package? Yes or no, and why?
Short answer is no. Man. I know, man, Pocono sucked. But later, I think it was Sunday night. Did you see what happened with Corbin Forrester and our good buddy Tyler or Timmy Hill fanboy Justin Fuller on Twitter?
Oh my goodness, that was quite a scene there with those two.
I don't know. I don't know how you feel about it. I I don't know. I thought it was funny just because I know Justin. I've been frenemies with him. He's a good guy in person, but man, he can drive you the wrong way. And obviously he did with Corbin. For those of you who didn't, basically it was Corbin Forrester and Justin Fuller, who is a fan. But like I said, he does have some connections to Timmy Hill. He's a friend of his. They got into a huge Twitter battle, and basically Corbin's calling him fat, telling him go eat some cake jokes and all this and that, and they're back and forth. And then you got the likes of Dave Moody telling oh, if you really think you shouldn't say it, you shouldn't say it, because man, he said some shit that he probably shouldn't have said. But I was plenty entertained by it, and I hope that that kind of stuff gets out more often because it's just funny to watch. I hope it doesn't affect him from a sponsorship standpoint, just because I think it's really funny, regardless if you like him or not. I thought it was just hilarious.
Well, honestly, what he said to get it all started was kind of gross, in my opinion. He was talking about the situation that happened with Noah Gregson's father, where he was charged with DUI and people died in that incident, which is very sad incident altogether. And I forget the exact words that were used, but it was pretty much to the effect of, oh, well, his dad's going to get off.
Because he's rich and he knows people.
Exactly. So, that's a little bit too soon for that, Corbin. You shouldn't be joking about whether it was joking or not, or if he was really meant it. Either way, some things are better left unsaid, and that was one of those times where it just shouldn't have been put into words and posted on Twitter. So, the backlash that he received from Justin Fuller in that moment, it was deserved, honestly.
100%.
But yeah, the back and forth was the catching point. That was the funny part about it, was that Fuller would say something to the effect of he was being classy in that, where he wasn't really saying anything untrue, and then Corbin would just come back with, "Oh, well, you're fat and you live with your mom." And every single time that there was a legitimate argument, it was, go eat something, you're fat. So Corbin, honestly, he he dished it out, and then he couldn't take it back, and then he, like you said, he got it from Moody. Dave Moody was saying, don't post things, and Corbin was like, well, I meant it, and freedom of speech and whatnot, and eventually, pretty much the whole NASCAR Twitter got all over it and was jumping all over Corbin because he was a pretty easy target at that moment. And sure enough, I don't know if it's still like it today, but I know as of yesterday, Corbin Forrester's tweets were protected, so nobody could see it.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that's a point of giving up and not wanting to have to listen to the mess that you created. But, I mean, it's just, drivers on Twitter, they're closer to the fans than they ever been just from social media. And drivers and all people in NASCAR, they have the ability to interact with their fans. And Fuller is, he's got the connections to Timmy Hill, like you said, but he's a fan, and just pretty much a NASCAR fan, and to see a driver going after him is kind of like, bro, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks because like I obviously love seeing these guys speaking out and speaking of what they actually think and stuff. But I mean, it's all bad press for Corbin, just because. I mean, dude, you're a NASCAR driver. I mean, not to discount Justin Fuller as a person, but he's just a fan. You can't let someone that's just a fan get under your skin to the point where you're basically relying on ad hominem to support your argument. I mean, yeah, if you know who Justin Fuller is, he's fat. He knows he's fat. He's a large man, and he doesn't care. Like I said, I met him in the past. I used to hate the dude. I actually respect the hell out of him at this point, just because he is a pretty nice guy. I know he's friends with, like I said before, Timmy and a couple other guys that are friends with Timmy. They're all really good dudes. So, I mean, good for him to maybe on his end get a little bit of 15 minutes of Twitter fame, just because he basically triggered a NASCAR driver to completely lose it over social media. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can't be, whether or not you have an opinion on the whole Gregson situation, you can't be posting stuff like that so soon, just because, man, it's such a tragic situation. You have a situation where a father takes the life of someone else, and then you have obviously Noah, who I don't think he's actually publicly said anything regarding the matter, and he doesn't have to. He's struggling with that, and then you have this huge argument come to fruition about it. It is honestly a big black eye to the social aspect of the sport for this weekend.
You don't want to see drivers getting muted. You don't want to see drivers not being able to speak their mind. But some things are just better left unsaid, and that's where all of social media needs to learn a lesson from this. Is that we want freedom of speech. We all want to be able to speak our minds on topics and stuff like that. And we don't want anybody censored by anything. But, just Corbin, if you're listening out there, buddy, pick and choose your fights. Just don't go out there and make a fool out of yourself like you did. It's it was sad to see. It was funny as hell, but just sad to see how it started and how it wound up. But I like to see, on most occasions, I like to see drivers getting into it with their fans sometimes, because it's funny. It's funny when Jimmy Johnson's having a bad day and he goes on Twitter to see how people say he sucks, and he goes out there and says something to the effect of "go f*** yourself." And it's just, I love seeing that type of interaction from drivers to the fans and the non-fans, and that's something that I really appreciate in this social media age.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, obviously, freedom of speech doesn't cover Twitter. Twitter can do whatever they want, and they can delete whatever they want and whatnot. But it's definitely a thin line that these guys gotta toe, just because everything is recorded. And if you delete it, guess what? Someone's already screenshot it. So, like you said to Corbin, just pick your battles. Obviously, you're not a high-end driver. No offense, but you're not a top guy. But man, just imagine if this was someone like a Jimmy Johnson calling fans fat and all this shit. I don't
It
know.
would have been on the front page of every single
Right.
media.
Right, and an ally would have had to get involved. So, I mean, you hate to see any kind of NASCAR driver have any kind of negative, what's the word? Negative publicity. It's really sad. But it is what it is. I think it'll blow over like anything else that's been on Twitter the last few years, or on Facebook or social media of any aspect. I think it'll blow over and everyone will forget about it.
You know what I hope's not negative? The 2021 Gen 7 car. I really hope that that they do this right. I mean, we've been talking about it offline, what we're kind of hoping for and looking to see. That they've put like little bite-sized pieces of information out there where they're saying that hybrid engines are coming and new manufacturers are going to be interested and all that stuff, and we have to suffer through the end of this year because, let's face it, they're not changing anything before the end of this year. But hopefully we get something a little bit different next year to hold us over before 2021 happens. But let's talk about this real quick. What are you looking for in your 2021 Gen 7 NASCAR race car?
Anything that's not the Gen 6 at this point. If I can get into specifics, it might take a little bit, but they have to get back to, honestly, they have to get back to the 80s, the late 70s, early 80s. I think it's possible that they can get these cars to have the power in the car and slow them down where it matters, and that's in the corner. One thing that I believe Dale Jr. talked about on his Dale Jr. download was narrowing up the tires themselves. Because honestly, if we can, the biggest part of the aero issue is that they're doing 160, 170, 190 at Michigan, all race. And when you're going so fast, you can't slow them down. You can't even think about running the engines at 800, 900 horsepower. If you get the cars to slow down to maybe 120, 130 at a place like Atlanta or a place like Texas, that'd be awesome. Because then you could run these cars at 750, 800 horsepower. They get to maybe 180, 190, and that's a safe range. Getting the cars off the ground is obviously paramount. Getting the cars symmetrical is a huge priority of mine. Getting as much dirty air out of the equation is obviously the most important. I mean, if you go watch, there's a good video I recommend to anyone. Go just Google Ontario Motor Speedway NASCAR. It's basically an Indy 500 style, Indianapolis Motor Speedway style track that was built in the 60s and 70s. In California, and it's basically the closest thing that we get to if they had no real aero issues in the cars today. Basically, just a huge train of cars slingshotting each other at a place like Indy. Now, if we can get something like that now, I'd be all for it.
I look at it where I don't think that's going to be possible, unfortunately. I feel like we're too smart. I feel like we've come too far as just in technology where I don't think there's going to be a way where we're not going to be able to figure out how to add downforce or take away downforce to, better ourselves at these tracks. So yeah, a more simple car might do it. I look back to the 2001 Atlanta spring race, the famous one where Kevin Harvick beat Jeff Gordon to the line.
Right.
That race that they had there, with the 6 cars under the blanket. That's what I want to see the end result be. No matter what it takes to get that again, I feel like that's possible. I feel like they could make a car that has the effects, the aero effects at a minimum to allow racing like that to happen again. At tracks like Atlanta, at tracks like Charlotte, at tracks like Kansas, at tracks like Michigan, Auto Club, Texas, you name it, Cookie Cutter, 2-miler, even Pocono or Indy. I would love to see racing like that happen all the time. That's what I've always gone back to, and that's what I would love to see happen. It's going to be tough. From what I understand from, I believe it was Adam Stern tweeted, they've gotten Dallara on board. Dallara, if you don't know, is the people who build the chassis for IndyCar. So, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point, because the IndyCar oval racing kind of sucks lately, but maybe they can help design cars that will be better suited for us. Maybe IndyCar is not their strong suit. Maybe NASCAR is their strong suit. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to whatever the Gen 7 brings, because I feel like it's going to be something different, more different than anything we've seen before. Like when they announced the car tomorrow, I was like, wow, that's something different, because of the wing on the back and the splitter on the front. And I was like, that looks like a futuristic car. And then it ended up being not so great, but it ended up being like the best racing that we've had, since. So it's like, you don't know what you're going to get with some of this stuff. I don't know. I just, like I said, the 2001 Atlanta race, the end of that race, the 6 cars on the blanket with Harvick and Gordon and Jr. and Dale Jarrett and Bobby Labonte, like, I love that race. I go back and watch that when I'm feeling down and I just want to, love NASCAR to its fullest. I go back and watch that and feel happy about everything again. And I would love to see racing like that back.
And I think it's possible. The biggest issue that the Gen 6 has, even compared to the COT, which, I mean, the Gen 6 was built on the same exact chassis as the car tomorrow, and then, of course, the 2011, 2012 rendition of the car tomorrow. It's all the same car, just different body. I mean, the biggest issue with the Gen 6 is the body in itself. You got a ton of downforce and a ton of side force, where if you get next to someone, you stall them out. If you get behind someone, you're stalled out yourself. So if they can, I think Dallara is going to be a really important partner in this, especially if they start working on the underbody stuff. One thing that NASCAR doesn't have yet, and a lot of series and a lot of functional racing teams, and they have diffusers on the car, something that they've never thought of for a stock car. It's really good for displacing air at a positive level. And it really helps with dirty air, especially, I memean, you go look at LMP racing over at Le Mans. I mean, they can get right behind each other, and those cars produce thousands of pounds of downforce in a car that's only 2,100 pounds, and they can run right behind one another. I think the closest thing in my head that I can think of what the car is going to look like is basically what they have in Australia in the Aussie supercars with a spoiler. So go look up Aussie supercar and then just Photoshop a spoiler. I think that's what we're going to have. Something that has some ground clearance, something that's a little bit smaller, something where the driver's a little bit closer to the center for safety reasons, something like that, where the car is going to be designed for a 550 horsepower car. Or a 550 horsepower engine, because that's the target they want, at least from the internal combustion side, like the actual fuel injected engine. I mean, we'll see as far as hybrid. I'm curious to see how they could implement that, especially with a lot of these tracks. They don't really brake that much. And if they do, it's a very minuscule amount. I wonder how that would work as far as the transferring and the conservation of energy towards the hybrid side of the engine. That's way above my pay grade for science. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But as long as we see something improve, with Dallara, I'm excited, just because bringing more brains into the operation, especially with NASCAR, where a lot of the executive decisions have been from guys like Steve O'Donnell and Brian France, who don't necessarily have the engineering background that a lot of these guys do, and even they don't have any driving experience to know what dirty air even is. I think it's a positive thing to get someone like that to have maybe a common chassis, something that we haven't had in decades, just because of, man, the money. It's so much more expensive than it used to be. So I know a lot of people are on the fence, whether it's a positive thing or a negative thing for spec stuff to become a thing, like a spec chassis, a spec center chassis, and then the rest is built by the manufacturer, whether it's the rear end or the front end. I hope it's something like that, because I'm for saving money 100% for these teams.
You've definitely given this a lot of thought. I know you have.
Oh, well, when I get into Twitter arguments with our favorite godfather, Dave Moody, I could write an entire essay why the Gen 6 is the worst thing that ever happened to NASCAR, except for maybe Brian France's incarnation into this world. But like I said, I can talk ad nauseum about the Gen 7. One thing that Dale Jr. talked about, and it's something that it honestly should be a high-end priority, is front end drag. That was a huge thing, like I mentioned before, in the 70s and 80s. If you go watch a Talladega race, they were slingshot passing every lap. 70, 80 lead changes, and the pack was only about 6 to 8 cars, just because it wasn't as equal as it is now, especially from an engine standpoint. But they were passing every single lap. You don't see that ever in NASCAR. So if they want that, that's how they got to do it. They got to produce some kind of front drag to create some kind of passing down the straightaway. If that's the route that they want to go, then that's the route that they're going to need to take. So, but like I said, I can talk forever about it. I could dedicate an entire 6-hour podcast to it, but we can move on if you'd like.
No, I'm enjoying this. I'm loving everything that you're saying. It definitely, sparking thoughts in my head. I definitely haven't put as much thought into this as you have, and I could see why you wanted to bring it up today, because it's definitely something that you're very passionate about, and I'm glad that you were able to talk about it today, because I feel like, if the right person hears this, maybe it'll spark, something in their head, and they'll be like, you know what, he's right. And I mean, that's the goal. I mean, both of us are here just to try and get our opinions out there, and maybe get somebody else steering the ship in a better direction. But yeah, I mean, I love NASCAR, whether we have, passing or not, or car or not. I'm never going to stop being a fan. I'm sure you'll never stop being a fan either, but it's important to talk about these things. It's important to talk about what the future holds, because if, there's not going to be people like us. There's not going to be fans that are going to stick around through the thick and the thin. People are, they're shallow.
They're very fickle.
Very
fickle people. I mean, hardcore fans that have come and gone just because they don't like a certain thing. It's NASCAR 2021 is the beginning either of a new beginning or the beginning of the end, because if the car doesn't pan out, I think it's over, because you got the TV agreement coming to an end in 2022. You've got series sponsors not sticking around very long. You've got sponsors in general becoming so expensive for these teams to provide for. If the racing isn't better, I hope that the cost is more efficient, and I think that's what bringing in Dallara is going to help. I honestly, like I said, the spec thing is a huge, it's a very, what's the word? It's very controversial, because if it's NASCAR doing it, they can charge out the wazoo whatever they want. I hope it doesn't happen that way, but the more things can be controlled, the more things can be cost effective, the less there's going to be this R&D of, oh, we got to find an extra 5 pounds of downforce, and it's going to cost $10 million. I hope that stops, because these teams they have infinite money. I mean, Penske, Hendrick, Roush, not so much, I guess, nowadays, but Gibbs, they have unlimited money because of Toyota, and it's like, it's just creating a huge gap. So I'm hoping with the Gen 7, not only better racing, just so guys can have a more say of where they finish, but I just want the sport to become more affordable, just so these guys can, newcomers can stick around, and we have another Barry Visser, Hollywood Cinderella story, and a young new team comes in and shocks the world. I mean, you don't see that anymore, and it's something that I hope we see with the new generation of NASCAR.
Yeah, these teams have unlimited money now, but if the interest isn't there in a couple of years, that money's not going to be unlimited anymore. Everything's finite, and this sport could be, I'd hate to see it go. I really would, but you're 100% right. I mean, they got to come up with something. But 2021 is either going to be the best thing or the worst thing to happen for NASCAR. So I look forward to it either way, and I hope that these heads definitely come up with the right decisions. But yeah,
it's a wait and see. And I can't believe I would get a negative opinion on this, but fans should always want a better product, and I hope that there isn't any kind of complacency with the owners, because, I mean, the owners have a big say in it. The manufacturers have a big say in it. I just hope there's no complacency. I hope they strive for the absolute best racing possible, because it not only is going to help them, but it's going to help the entire sanctioning body. But we'll save some for later, because we got the entire 2020 season left. We'll probably. I anticipate something probably in the spring of next year. We'll start hearing stuff, because that's when we started hearing stuff about the Gen 6. So we'll talk about it here and there. Like I said, I can talk about it for hours. So we got to spread it out over the next 6 months. Tomorrow we got some Peak Antifreeze Series racing. They're at.
No, we don't. It would have been tonight, man. It's Tuesday.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Tuesday night. They ended up having a 3-week break for whatever reason. So they're going to Sonoma.
Is it next week?
Mm-hmm. And 1 week from the time of this recording, they'll be at Sonoma for their first of 2 road course races this season. They're actually going to be going to the Roval later on in the playoffs, but they'll be going to Sonoma. I believe they're going to be running the carousel.
They are.
So it'll be interesting to see how these top oval drivers do going left and right. I think Luza said in his interview 2 weeks ago that don't expect to see him up there, so that really opens the field to pretty much anybody. These guys, they may be oval drivers, but they're still some of the best drivers altogether in the world. And just like real NASCAR, you're going to see a lot of the top talent still up towards the front at these road races. So I'll expect to see some of the normal names up there. Even if Luza doesn't think he'll be up there, I think he'll be close to the front. I think this is a really good week for someone like a Ray Alfala to, start gaining some traction, get himself back in the conversation. I don't know. It'll be fun next week. I'm not really sure what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple names that come to mind. I think Novak's going to be the favorite. He's been really fast. He was really fast last time they ran at Sonoma. Bobby Zelensky is another one. He's a road racing freak. I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot of the same guys up front. I think this has to be the beginning of Ray's redemption, because I think it's the package. Everything's so close that any mistake made by anyone can become a 5 to 8 car wreck, and he's been involved in so much chaos. Combine that with just not hitting the setup every week. He's in a lot of trouble. It's just crazy to think that we're talking about one of the best sim racers in the world, relegated to possibly the second tier of the oval side in the Pro Series. He might have to fight his way out of that back into peak, but I doubt it. He'll be fine. But I think Novak is my favorite, just because he's killing it on the setup side. I mean, he's been fast every week in that 6 car. He's bad fast at the road courses, and then you got like the likes of Keegan Leahy. I know I was talking to Blake Reynolds a couple days ago. He said that he's really good. He is really good. I've seen him road race, and he's a real talent. So,
do you remember when Blake came to the FTF iRacing League, and we were at Watkins Glen, and
he's drifting around each corner, and he's still faster than everyone else?
Yeah, that's the type of talent that he's got, and we were all thinking that he was kind of messing with us, but I mean, he was just going fast, I guess. Blake will be one to watch. I'll be looking at Logan Clampett, because I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he's gotten like the pro license and every single thing that he's done, including road, including dirt. So I'll be looking at him. I don't think he might be one of the top 5 finishers. I don't know if he'll be close to winning, but a lot of talent, and definitely gonna be interesting to watch, because they're gonna be out of their element. So probably gonna see them make more mistakes than usual, and you're probably gonna see some angry drivers at some point. So I'm looking forward to it. That'll be next week on Tuesday night at 9. Don't forget to tune in to the Race Spot TV stream. They've got it on iRacing Twitch, so it's twitch.tv/iRacing. We definitely, all the fans out there that enjoy a regular NASCAR race should definitely check it out, because these guys are sanctioned NASCAR drivers too. They just do it on a computer, and me and Kevin have been doing it. That's how we met back in 2007.
Yep.
So definitely go check it out. It'll be fun. The series that we don't like to talk about, but happens, is the Heat series. They had their second race of the season.
They did,
and it was a lot cleaner.
Oh yeah, I agree.
They still had their mistakes from time to time, but it was definitely a more cleaner event. I'm looking up the results right now, because I completely forgot. Okay, so the Xbox winner was Wow That's Garbage. He drives the number 6.
The irony of that name.
Yeah. He won on the Xbox side, and then the driver of the 32, which is Fast Fed 32, he won on the PlayStation side. They were at Auto Club Speedway, and they did, I want to say they did much longer races. I want to say they did like 60 lap races this time.
I don't feel like they were that long. I think they were only 30 laps.
No, they were definitely longer than the other one.
I don't know. I can't remember. I remember just flipping back and forth, because me and a couple friends were in the chat trolling up a bit, and that was a bunch of fun. So I mean, it's such a joke. I guess just because I'm so used to being a part of a community where realism is so important. I mean, you got guys with controllers not only winning races, but dominating. I'm pretty sure the guy that won last week at Charlotte, the 21 car, the guy who was wearing the white Oakleys, I forget his name.
That was Slade Gravitt.
Yeah, there you go. Good name, but forgettable. It's just, I don't know. I can't take it seriously when you got a dude with a controller outwheeling people with a wheel. You got people like our buddy Diego wearing racing gloves while using the controller. I don't know what to think of that. I used to not think gloves on anything in sim racing was tolerable, but
The Stuart Haas guys wear the helmets.
yeah, I mean, I think that's just fun. I think they're just having fun. They know it's funny, and they're just trying to make the best of a situation where it's kind of like comical and humorous. But I mean, I just hope it doesn't leave a bad look at the sim racing side of things, because I mean, you got iRacing. I do think they attract more eyes, more serious eyes compared to NASCAR Heat.
I hope so.
I really do, because I think the iRacing side is as close as you can get. I'm sure a lot of people would even argue it's harder than the real thing. So I'll keep an eye on this series, purely just to get a good chuckle. But I can't keep it to myself. That series is just sad, and it's pathetic, and it's only a thing because NASCAR puts their money into it. It's their in-house product, so. I mean, it's cool that you got all these teams involved and there's actual money involved and whatnot, but I don't know. I wish they would just reallocate it to iRacing.
I'm happy for the people that get to participate in it. It's really cool for them to have this spotlight, to be a part of something this big. So, I mean, kudos to them for being the 28 best at this, but at the same time, like, there was... The thing that bothers me the most is that you see these wrecks happen, and there was one guy that absolutely flew and died. Like their car just took off and was flipping and flopping everywhere. And they come back in and they hit the fix damage button, and then they're back on track. They haven't lost any laps, and then they're competing for the top 5 position again a few laps later. Like, I don't like that at all. We had a car flipping and flopping at Kansas in iRacing, and that guy could not continue. That's, yes, there are shortcomings to the sim racing in general, because you get unrealistic incidents from time to time, but there should be some sense of realism where a car that flips and flops and rolls over and completely gets decimated shouldn't be able to get back on track and compete for the victory. But that's just my personal gripe on it. I still love to see it. I still I enjoy the racing that we do get out of it from time to time. Like, it was a pretty good race. I watched the PlayStation one, because I prefer PlayStation. But the race that they had, Fast Fed, he was in the top 5 the entire night, and Slade was up there, but then Slade got shunted out of the line and he hit the wall. And caution didn't come out, but he was up there, and then the Junior Motorsports guy in the 7 car was up there on old tires, and it actually did make a difference. I don't know if he was just not as good as the 32 car, but I mean, it's racing. I like racing in general, and I like sim racing. It's just there are points to it where it's just it's aggravating a little bit, being that from what we've done with FTF on the NR 2003 side, and what we've seen in the iRacing community with the Peak series and all that stuff. It's like, this is like the Joker League. So it is what it is. I'm happy, like I said, for the people, and I do want to see it be successful just for the people that are involved in it. But at the same time, you cringe every once in a while.
I mean, it's hard not to. Like I said, I'm more excited about iRacing just because, I know a bunch of those guys. They work their asses off. They perform hours upon hours of setup tasting and getting, I mean, with the new configuration, they are running the carousel. It'll be honestly the first preview of the track. So I'm excited for that. Now I'm going to get this one right. I know I'm going to get it right. They're at Michigan in Cup and Xfinity, and they're at the trucks at Texas on Saturday night. No, Friday night.
It's Truck Series Night in America on Friday night, and I do look forward to that because they're sharing the spotlight with IndyCar, which that's a whole nother discussion that we're not going to get into tonight. But I do love seeing the series kind of join up in some fashion. But Truck Series Night in America coming up to you. Texas Motor Speedway. Ross Chastain breaking the internet today. He's running for truck points now. So, we're 14 weeks in, and Ross decides, I want to run for a truck championship, so just erase everything and let me start over. So, he got that win earlier in the season.
Doesn't count.
It doesn't count for He doesn't get that benefit. He doesn't get any of the points that he would have earned if he had declared at the beginning of the season, which would have put him second in points right now if he would have made that decision. But now he's declaring midway through the regular season. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be able to get back in the top 20 because that's where the cutoff is. But it's just going to be difficult to, land a victory in that series because it's all wide open now. Kyle Busch is out. It's everybody else, and everybody's hungry for a win. Ross already got his win. It don't count. He's still going to be hungry to win another one, but you got guys like Brett Moffitt. You got guys like Grant Enfinger, Ben Rhodes, Matt Crafton, Stuart Friesen. All those guys are going to want to win just as bad, and it's going to be fun to see. It is.
Yeah. Texas is going to be better, I think, this go around, just because they added the PJ1. I'm a huge advocate of it at this point, just because anything to add a second groove is good in my book. I mean, it being at night might not be as beneficial as it is during the daytime, but I'm curious to see if it's better. I think it'll be really fun in 3 and 4. 1 and 2, not so much. And then, of course, we have IndyCar, but we'll talk about that kind of short. I think it'll be a fun race. It always is at Texas. It's always, in my opinion, the second best race of the year for IndyCar.
IndyCar always puts on a good show at Texas.
It's always been good. And then we have the biggest wild card in Michigan with the Cup guys. I'm scared. Like I said before, if the package doesn't work here, why are we running it? I thought it was going to be great at Auto Club, and it was not.
I almost don't want it to work. I don't know if I'm being negative for no reason here, but I almost don't want it to work so that they can realize that this was a giant mistake, and so Kyle Busch can get more questions about it after the race and blow up at more people. But it'll be interesting. I think the Xfinity race will be okay. I'm not, gonna hold my breath over the Xfinity race, even though it's. I haven't looked at any entry lists, and I think Kyle Busch is eligible to still run, so I think Kyle Busch might be in the show at Michigan. I don't know, but I know for a fact Kyle Busch isn't allowed to do any more truck races this year. So we'll have to see when the entry list comes out for Michigan if Kyle's going to be on it or not. And then, Cup race, it's flip a coin at this point. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? We'll find out.
Yeah. The issue with Michigan is that it's so narrow. I mean, obviously the track is wide, but the racing groove is so small. It's just crazy that it hasn't widened out to what it was back in the early and mid 2000s. I think it's just the way the track is paved, but hopefully they're going slow enough to where they can get some kind of slingshot passing down. I want it to be a good race just because I'm thinking short term. Long term, I think you're right. I think for a long term benefit, this needs to fail, unfortunately. And I think it will, just because even when they get runs, it's not that much. It's not that big of a run unless someone's packed underneath somebody like it is at the plate races. I mean, you really can't make a pass by yourself. It's really rare. So they're going to be going faster than they ever have in this package. Yeah, I 100% anticipate wide open from the leader the entire run. I think honestly we're going to see some shocking front runners. I think the Childress guys with their really trimmed out setups are going to thrive here. And I think if they can stay up front, which I think they can do pretty easily as long as they don't mess up in strategy, I think we'll see a Childress guy or even a Hendrick guy in victory lane, unless it becomes a handling race like it's become later on in each run. But I really don't foresee that. I think it's going to be 100% wide open. Hopefully, if they're close, it's not how it was last year with the draft train, where they were just single file. But we'll see. We're only a couple days away from practice. We'll get a glimpse of it then, and we'll ultimately either be disappointed or pleasantly surprised.
I kind of agree with you on the wild card factor, because we've kind of seen that already. Even though it's been the same guys in victory lane like Truex and Busch and Keselowski, you still had Bowman up there and competing. You still had Byron up there with his pole. Like, since they went back to single car qualifying, William Byron hasn't qualified outside the top 5. Sans Talladega, but Talladega, they still hadn't officially switched back to the single car qualifying yet.
Right.
So once they made that official, Byron's gotten 2 poles now in a row and hasn't qualified outside the top 5. So, I mean, if the strategy works the way that it could, with Chad Knaus on top of the backs, we could see William Byron up there. Not only possibly get his first top 5 of his career, but also maybe compete for a win. You could see Alex Bowman up there again. Bowman's been really impressive ever since the Hendrick cars started getting back on track at Texas. So I'll look for Bowman as well. But I really do think you're going to see the Fords up there, like Logano and Keselowski and Blaney. And I'm probably going to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Logano take this one.
Yeah, I mean we're obviously going to see the Gibbs guys. I think, Harvick's been the fastest guy week in and week out. Hopefully, for his sake, nothing bad happens. I think he's overdue for a win. It's going to be interesting. I think, if I'm honest, I think either result that we're going to see, either it's close or it's a big gap fest where they spread out. I think we're going to be disappointed regardless, because I don't think we want plate racing at Michigan, but I also don't think we want the inability to pass at Michigan. So I think it's going to be a tale of massive disappointment. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I'm starting to become Nostradamus on these races, so I don't think I will be, but we'll see. It's going to be worth a look at least.
I'm definitely more cynical than I was when the season started.
I'm sorry. I have that effect on people.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad thing to be cynical about things that you need to be cynical about. It's definitely it happens, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, it is what it is. We've got what we got, and I mean, whether I like it or not, I'm still looking forward to it, and I hope I both hope and don't hope we have a good race on Sunday.
We'll see. I think we're getting close to our time limit. Do you have any other topics you want to discuss?
I really got nothing else. I mean, we don't technically have a time limit here, but I do have to wake up for work in about 4 hours, so it probably would be best for us to wrap it up here. So, I had fun tonight, and I'm looking forward to the next one next week already. If you haven't already seen on our Facebook page, we do have this podcast available on Apple Podcasts. We also have it available on Google Play Music, and we have it available on Spotify. If there's any other podcast streaming channels that you want us to have it uploaded on, please let us know. I will do my best to get it up on there. Also worth noting, me and Kevin are official business owners. Well, technically just me right now, but I'm going to have that amended.
Off the damn feed.
I'll get you added sooner than later. But our company here, M2 Multimedia, is official. So that was pretty cool news to happen throughout the week as well. So that's pretty much all I got. You got anything else you want to add, Kev?
I just hope my voice is better by next week. It's been like this since last Wednesday, so we'll see how this goes.
Definitely get some more chicken soup in you, and take a couple of Ricolas, and we'll see you back this time in about 6 days. For everybody else, for the fans, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.